Imagine a world bathed in the rising sun of an invincible Japanese empire, its flag unfurling across a conquered Pacific. But what if a single battle, the Coral Sea Clash, had swung the other way? A different victor, a different world. And let's find the answer to the question, what if? A Japanese victory at the Coral Sea would have dramatically altered the Pacific War's trajectory. Unhindered, their advance toward Port Moresby would have secured Papua New Guinea, bringing Australia directly under threat. This strategic foothold would have severely hampered Allied supply lines, impacting US morale and potentially delaying or fundamentally changing the Pacific campaign. Crucially, the island-hopping strategy, a cornerstone of Allied success, would have needed a complete overhaul, potentially rendering it infeasible or significantly delaying its execution. The implications are far-reaching: a weakened Allied effort, a prolonged war, and a vastly different geopolitical landscape. A victorious Japan at the Coral Sea would have dramatically accelerated its resource acquisition. Southeast Asia's oil, rubber, and other vital resources would have flowed freely into the Japanese war machine, fueling a potentially longer and more brutal conflict. This increased access would have extended Japanese influence into the Indian Ocean, challenging British dominance and potentially altering the balance of power. Simultaneously, the redirected military might could have significantly impacted the war in China, perhaps leading to a swifter Japanese victory there or a complete shift in strategy. The consequences ripple through the global landscape. A Japanese victory would have profoundly boosted national morale and solidified the military's control. Public dissent would likely have been further suppressed, strengthening the already authoritarian regime. However, a prolonged war, fueled by continued success, would have strained resources and potentially led to internal tensions. The sustained war effort might have exacerbated existing social inequalities and created economic hardship despite initial gains from resource extraction in conquered territories. This prolonged conflict could have led to internal fracturing within the Japanese government and society, regardless of external military victories. The sustained demands of a prolonged war could have eventually undermined even a victorious Japan, potentially creating instability even amidst initial triumph. A victorious Japan would have fundamentally reshaped the Axis alliance. Instead of a strained partnership, a dominant Japanese Pacific presence would have given them significant leverage against Germany and Italy. Resource-rich Southeast Asia, under Japanese control, could have lessened Axis reliance on vulnerable supply lines. This altered dynamic might have led to a more coordinated Axis strategy, potentially prolonging the war in Europe and altering the Allied approach. Alternatively, a confident Japan might have pursued a more independent path, focusing on consolidating its Pacific gains rather than engaging in a full-scale European conflict, potentially leading to a different outcome in the European theater entirely. The repercussions on the Cold War are equally profound. A powerful, resource-rich, and independent Japan would have been a significant player, challenging both the US and the Soviet Union for influence, creating a far more multipolar world than the one that emerged. A victorious Japan might have established a Pacific empire, dominating trade routes and resources. Occupied territories from Southeast Asia to potentially parts of Australia would likely have experienced prolonged periods of exploitative resource extraction and cultural suppression, leaving lasting economic and social scars. This new order could have fundamentally altered the geopolitical landscape, potentially creating a drastically different Cold War dynamic, with a powerful independent Japan challenging both the US and the Soviet Union. The modern world might be unrecognizable, with vastly different power structures and economic alliances reflecting the influence of a dominant Japanese Pacific sphere. A Japanese victory at Coral Sea would have drastically reshaped World War II's Pacific theater and global power dynamics, creating an alternate post-war world. In your opinion, what if the Japanese had won the Battle of the Coral Sea? Share your thoughts in the comments.